I have with me in the studio, joining us this morning, is Mr. Garba Shehu, who is Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Quite a number of things have happened since you were last here. We saw the army, most prominent of which was Operation Python Dance 2, which was declared, and then much later we heard the military declaring, we're not quite sure now if that was a pronouncement or a declaration, but we heard from the defense headquarters that IPOB is now regarded as a militant terrorist organization. And there was an outcry that that process had not followed due process, had not followed the rule of law. And then yesterday we were greeted with news from the ministry, from the Attorney General's office, that they have finally gone to court and they have been able to obtain an order from the court. Why was that process not followed initially?
I think the problem was essentially one of communication. The army, as they explained much later, what they said is we looked at this organization, we analyzed it, and it fits the description of a terrorist organization. If it fits the terrorist description of organization, then it is a terrorist organization. So it's as simple as that. So
was that what the military was doing?
Sorry?
Was that what the military was doing? Was the military alerting Nigerians to their own analysis?
That yes, they had, it fits in, and as Americans say, if it walks like a duck, you know, it moves like a duck, looks like a duck, it's a duck. So therefore, that's it, and that's their own description of it. So the processes were bound to follow, since they themselves are obviously fully conscious of the fact that from the point of view of the law, they cannot do what the law does not empower them to do.
Are you sure this is not medicine after death? Because some people would say that it was upon realizing that they had no such powers that the presidency had to step in.
Give them the benefit of the doubt. I think that they have acquitted themselves well on this account.
Okay. Now, some people have also argued that, you know, what's the haste? I mean, they believe that it's too soon to declare IPOB a terrorist organization. Some people believe that dialogue should have been employed more in engaging these groups, this particular group.
But the IPOB itself has clearly indicated they are not interested in dialogue. You know that in the run-up of these processes, the governors of the states in the region had put up a forum. IPOB said, no, thank you, we are not interested. The senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria set up a delegation, and they said, IPOB, we want to speak to you. And the one said, no, thank you, we don't want to talk to you.
That was not the impression we got. We saw quite a number of meetings being held with IPOB leader Nnamdi Kanu
Initially, yes.
And governors of the Southeast.
Initially, yes. It's clear that the guy had himself shut everyone out of the process.
Which was truncated after the federal government, after the military, because we're not very sure now. When we say the federal government deployed troops, there will be the argument as to, no, the federal government did not deploy troops. It was a military exercise going on.
Okay, assuming I leave it at that and I concede to you, what more did anybody needed to see coming from IPOB to act? When they had declared a territory, they had made open, clear a threat to seize neighboring states. They have printed passports, they have printed currency, and they are taxing people illegally.
Do we have that? I mean, they had printed passports and currency?
Exactly. And they are taxing money by force. So what else do you need to act? I think they had laid themselves, out there for this sort of thing to follow. So
perhaps IPOB has been isolated, but then there are fears that, many more groups like this might come up, because for them, they believe that, the matters on the ground, the grievances on the ground upon which IPOB fed are still very much prevalent, and that if the federal government doesn't address these issues, you might see many more groups springing up.
Well, I think that nobody had ever imagined that there would be silence of the graveyard all over the country. There would be agitation, there would be protests, there will be claims and the counter-claims. But the important thing is that they are done within the law of the land, within the constitution, parameters of our own constitution. In the case of IPOB, they clearly had no regard for the constitution. They had torn it to shreds, And they were determined to plunge this country into a major, major crisis, which thankfully has been averted.
The federal government had a different reading. We were listening to Alhaji Lai Mohammed, and he was talking about how disgruntled treasury looters are the ones behind this. Is that a view shared by all within the presidency, or is that just the views of the Ministry of Information and Culture?
I think the thing is that there are several elements that have come together. The breach of the law, the breach of the Constitution by IPOB, and also the fact that people who are not happy with the ongoing situation, people who had benefited from the old order, obviously they're looking for opportunities. And if they see chances in the use of IPOB to undermine government, they obviously will do so. So the minister was absolutely correct in saying what he did.
So that was not from any particular intelligence in terms of tracing the source of funding of
No,
IPOB?
there is a basis for it. No, the minister could not have been frivolous on a serious matter like this. And I think that he has said, subsequent upon that, that diplomatic process have already begun. To block sources of funding and to also lay protests before nations that have allowed their territories for the broadcast, of subversive, radio to Nigeria.
Well, I'm sure you must have been following quite a number of rhetoric. I mean, when this government came to power, some people might say that the divisiveness which we seem to be seeing right now started during the campaigns. Which eventually saw this government come to power, and they felt that, a lot more ought to have been done to try and reconcile the country, and try and ensure that, whoever feels aggrieved, their pains are soothed. Would you say that this administration has done a lot in that regard? Because some people believe that it's falling far short of what it needs to do to assuage pains and make everybody feel a part of the country.
That would be an unfair assertion to make. I think that this administration has been the fairest under this constitution that we have seen. When problems have arisen, they are identified, government has responded by, you have seen all of the consultations that have taken place on the instruction of the president, spearheaded by the Vice President of Nigeria. It had a calming effect in the South, and in engagement in the Southeast and all of that. So now the problem, I think, is that a politician who is barren of issues, who probably has nothing to hold against our administration. This is a government that is committed to infrastructure, accountability, war against corruption. Obviously, they are losers, people who had gained from the rotten order of the old order of the past. So they fight back, and whatever it is for them, it's fair. They think that it's fair, that they use just everything at Buhari, and that's what's happening in the country.
Well, Alhaji, some people might disagree. I mean, for quite a number of them, they believe that there is what they perceive to be a glass ceiling for a certain ethnic group in this country. For instance, quite a number of people believe that an Igbo man might never be president. Some believe that an Igbo man might never be chief of army staff, can never be chief of defense staff, that the military is strictly the preserve of, two other major ethnic groups and not that of the Igbo man, for instance.
If they work hard at it, they will get it. How did it happen that Mr. Jonathan, from one of the smallest ethnic minority groups in the country, became president?
Smallest.
Well, you can see...
He is from the fourth largest majority ethnic group in this country.
Well, whatever that group was in terms of the numbers, would you agree that it's lesser in numbers than the Igbos? And he made it.
Under what circumstances?
Yeah, well, upon the death of the president. But then he put himself up for an election.
And you saw just how fierce even that process was.
Well, whatever it was, the thing is that he himself, not ourselves, not anyone said, he said, well, it's happening in Nigeria. And that this is myself from the smallest of the ethnic groups, and here I am. So, and the thing is, are we really back to tribalism in this country? After all of the things that had happened in the history of this country, the civil war in the 60s and all of that, can we be Nigerians without resort to this primordial, commitments, and that people are measured on the basis of their own capabilities, ability to deliver on things that they can do. And there are good people all over this country, competent people who can run things, who can do things wherever. When they leave this country, they go abroad, they acquit themselves excellently. And nobody looks at them to say, well, this one, could he have been Igbo? No, that's not how they are measured abroad. So why don't we do it at home? So I don't think that it's a correct measure, it's a correct scale on which to put Nigerians.